Good afternoon, Year Sixes. It is Mr. Bellingham here with a new series of music lessons for us. I hope you had a lovely half term. Hope you enjoyed a break from some schoolwork and are ready to get back in with things and get on with learning some new things together. If you think back to before the half term, we were looking at the app Music Maker Jam, and we were programming and making our own songs using the different samples and the different loops in that app. This half term, we're going to carry on with a music technology theme. We're going to carry on using technology to create music, but we're going to really look at the different elements that are used to make up music. So thinking about things like rhythm, so drums and rhythm to create a beat, bass lines, melodies, chord structures, notes, and how all of those things kind of intertwine to make a really good song. Okay, when you were making your song in Music Maker Jam last half term, you were already doing a lot of that without thinking, or without realizing you were doing it. You were thinking about what sounded good, and you were thinking about the relationship between the different parts of a song and the different elements. But you probably didn't think, oh, is that because my bass line is like this and my drums are like that? You just kind of sensed whether they fit well or whether they didn't. But we're going to have a look a little bit more about the theory of it and how we can program these samples for ourselves. Okay? So to do that, we're going to be using an app, a website made by a company called Ableton, and it's just like an Ableton learning platform. So I will put a link here that you can follow. I'll also pop a link in the description for you to click on if it's easier. So type that in now, or click and jump over, and it will bring up a website that looks like this. So hopefully it leads you to this bit here where it says get started making music. What we're going to do today then is we're going to look at how to create beats. So we're going to use different drum samples, different drum sounds to make our own rhythm that we can then use in other bits of songs, or we can change as we go along as well. So if you follow my mouse, if you click out here on this menu, you can see there's different chapters here down the side, okay? And here are the kind of key elements that I mentioned already that we need to create a song. So we've got things like beats, notes and scales, chords, bass lines, and melodies. So we're gonna have a look each week at a different one of those. For today, we want to click on beats. And then there are little kind of mini lessons about different songs, different types of beats, different genres and things in there as well. Now, I'm not going to spend a long time looking at all of these just because it would take us a good while to get through. I'm just going to pick out a few things that are most relevant to us, I think, at the moment. If you want to spend some more time during the week, after you finish doing the activity, maybe exploring these, having a look at some of the different things, there's some really good musical learning in there as well. But I'll leave that for you as sort of any extra work if you would like to, and if you're enjoying particular kind of lessons and series. So for today, we're going to look first at this one here that says, what are these sounds? So if you click there, and here we are then on the what are these sounds, and we've got some different examples which I'll let you explore kind of by yourself in a minute. But what I really wanted to talk to you about was the different drums and the different sounds that we're going to be using as we program our beats. So there's three main ones. The first one is called a kick drum. As you can see, you can't really see an idea of size, but if you've seen a drum kit before, you'll know it's a big drum. Okay, it's the biggest one of the drum set. It sits on the floor right in front of the drummer, and you play it by pressing down this pedal, and it makes the beater hit the skin, and it makes a big, boomy, low, deep sound. Okay, so if you think about, firstly, it's called a bass drum. Okay, but if you think about when we play the djembe and we use the bass, okay, it's giving a very similar idea to using the bass. Now the kick drum is much bigger, so it's going to be an even lower sound and even more kind of thick, boomy sound, but it gives the same idea of using a bass on the djembe. Okay, then we also have either the clap or the snare, and that's just going to depend whether we're using an acoustic drum kit, okay, like a physical kit in a room that makes a sound itself, in which case it would be a snare drum. and that's just got a skin there that you play with drumsticks, and then attached to the bottom of the snare drum are on the skin are some wires, like some metal wires, and it just gives it a little bit of a rattle and quite a punchy sort of cracky sound. Okay, think similarly to playing like the tone or the slap on your djembe. If we were making electronic music, and actually the samples we're going to be using today are more electronic, then it's going to be the sound of someone clapping. Okay, but think again like body percussion type sounds we've done before. It works to fulfill the same role of like the tone or the slap on the djembe, the snare drum, the clap. They're all a different way of making the same sort of sound. Okay, and then the last one is this sort of strange looking cymbal called a hi-hat. And all it is it's a cymbal here, a little cymbal with an upside down one underneath. And as you can see, you've got a foot pedal here at the bottom as well. And we play it with sticks, and we use it more similarly to how we might use the shaker when we've done work together in class. Now, the drummer can either put their foot on the pedal here, and as they push down, it just closes this little gap that you can see, so there's no gap, and we call that a closed hi-hat. And that would make a really short sound, and of quite a dead sound, so when you play it, it gets like the metal sound of playing the hi-hat, but the sound doesn't ring out for very long at all. And then if you want to, you can then lift your foot off the pedal and play it, and you've got this space for the sound to kind of reverberate around a little bit more and escape out, and you'll get a much longer sound. Okay, so you'll hear the initial hit of the hi-hat, but then it will reverberate out as well. And you can do any kind of variation in between as well. Okay, so they're the sounds that we will be using today. Now, have a little experiment here just at the bottom. You can see you've got, it says try all the electronic sounds together and try all the acoustic sounds together. And all I want you to do is just spend a couple of minutes just trying different rhythms, make your own rhythms up, just clicking on the different sounds, and just really start to get an idea of how they sound different. Okay, so how the acoustic sound gives you a different feel than the electronic one, and there's no right or wrong, it's just kind of your personal preference and whatever would fit with the type of song you are making. Okay, so pause the video, spend a couple of minutes just clicking around there and seeing what sounds you can make. Okay, off you go. Okay then, so hopefully you've had a bit of an experiment. You've kind of maybe got your ideas of the different sounds you like the best, and we want to get on with programming some rhythms ourselves, don't we? So if you click back on the menu again, now we're going to skip over most of these today, but like I said, have a look at those in your own time if you want to. There's some really good stuff, particularly looking at the songs. That you can play the song on YouTube. Again, I can't do that with just because of copyright and licensing and things, but you're very welcome to have a look at that in your own time. But we're going to click on this play with beats down here. And it should hopefully bring up a rhythm grid, which it doesn't seem to want to do. Okay, there we are. So we have here then this grid, and we've got the 4 sounds. Can you see we've got the kick, the clap, the closed hat, and the open hat. So this is using the electronic drum kit, the electronic sounds. Then at the top we've got tempo, and it says 85 BPM. And we can ignore these things down here for the moment. We shouldn't need those. Okay, and then we've got a play button as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this drum machine, this kind of programmable software, to create our own drum loop. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is just tempo. So I'm just going to, in fact, we'll do it a slightly different way. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a rhythm that we can program in. And you can do this at the same time as me. If you're using 2 different devices, feel free to kind of work together as we're going along. If you're kind of watching and the video on the same device that you're using the software on, then just pause it as often as you need to, kind of to catch up and to go along. Okay, so just to explain very briefly how this works, it's divided the 1 bar of music, so think 1 bar, 4 beats. It's divided it into 16th notes. So each one of these squares going across from left to right is a 16th of a bar of music, okay? Now we usually count in fours, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4. So those on the beat notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see you've got a slightly darker line here? You've got a slightly darker line here, and on there. Okay, those just the square after the darker line. So here, there, and there. They're going to be our 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Our T notes, if you like, if you think about how we've talked about rhythms when we were a little bit lower down school. Then, if we want to turn them into coffee notes, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, all we need to do is fill in the middle of the space. So it's like the third square. Okay, so this rhythm would now be coffee, 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 coffee. If we want to then make like lemonades, we'd have 3 like that. And then Coca-Cola notes, we'd fill in all 4 of the squares. Okay, so it's just a different way of making the same sort of rhythms that we would use in class. It's just a different visual representation. Okay, so probably the most common rhythm that you'll come across if you listen to music is just kind of like a classic rock groove. Okay, we'll call it an 8th note groove because it uses 8th notes. So think essentially coffee notes. Okay, and all we'll do is we'll set a kick drum on beat number 1. On beat number 2, we'll set the snare or the clap. On beat number 3, we'll set the kick. And on beat number 4, we'll set a snare or a clap. Okay, and then we called it 8th notes, didn't we? We said it was kind of coffee notes, but at the moment, we've only got T notes here. So on the hi-hat, and I'm going to use the closed hi-hat, we will set coffee notes. And these will kind of play over the top at the same time as the rest of the rhythm. And if we just click play there, okay, we've got a really kind of common rhythm. If you think about beatboxing and the beatboxing videos we've done before in class, it's like the boots and cats and boots and cats and, isn't it? Okay, it just fits perfectly. And that's a very simple way of programming a beat. Okay, now just before we move on to looking at some others, it says at the top here, we talked briefly, it says tempo and 85 BPM, okay? And all the tempo means is just the speed of the song. So we can very quickly change the feel of the song by changing the tempo. So if I get it here and drag it across to make it a bigger number, where it's faster, it's going to sound very different. Okay, if I drag it back down to a lower number, okay, you can see it gives a very different feel, and we probably went fairly extreme at both ends, but even fairly small changes around the middle can make a very different feel. So most of the time we'll be looking at numbers for the music we listen to. A slow song might be around 60 beats per minute. A fast song might be more around 130, 140 beats per minute. Okay, then really slow or really fast songs would be outside of that. But most music you hear on the radio is going to be somewhere around sort of 80, 90, 100, 110, 120 beats per minute, BPM. Okay, and if you think about it, you don't need to know exactly the length of the notes to create the rhythms, but beats per minute just literally means how many beats there are. So when we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, how many of those beats there are every minute. So 60 seconds in a minute, 60 beats per minute means there's going to be 60 beats every minute. So every beat will be every second. Okay, 120 beats per minute is double the speed, so there's going to be a beat every half a second. Okay, so you can see that's going to be quite a fast song at 120 beats per minute. Okay, I think for today I'm going to set mine around 90 and we'll leave it there for now. Okay, so like I said, feel free to pause as often as you need to as we're going along to have an experiment with these things, but we will carry on having a look at a slightly different drum rhythm and how we can change the feel. Okay, so we had that one. If we want to change the feel straight away, we could make these hi-hats into 16th notes. So I'm just going to play it as 8th notes first. Okay, and then if I make it into 16th notes, it's going to sound totally different. Okay, do you see how much that changes the feel of the song, even though the kick drum and the clap or the snare didn't change at all? And the reason for that is the kick drum is really our foundation for the rhythm. It really sets the rhythm. Okay, I'm going to very quickly just show you another kind of variation of the same rhythm, which is often called 4 on the floor, which you might use more in like pop music or dance music, and all it does is on every beat, on beat 1, on beat 2, on beat 3, and beat 4, so all actually on the beats, we have a kick. I'm just going to take the hi-hats off for now. And it gives us a really solid beat. Okay, and then to make the rhythm more interesting, I can improvise on the hi-hats a little bit, and we should be able to come up with a fairly good rhythm. So we'll have a lemonade, a coffee, and another lemonade, and let's have a look at this. Okay, so can you see how we can add those hi-hats in just to give it a bit something a bit different, make it a little bit more interesting, but the foundation of the rhythm comes from the kick and the clap, very particularly from the kick. We can do whatever we like with the hi-hats, we can make it as crazy as we want, but it doesn't lose the sense of kind of rhythm and beat because of what we've done on the kick drums. Okay, so what I would like you to do then today as an activity is just to create, I'm just going to clear it off and I'm going to do an example for you as well. I want you to create a rhythm yourself, really thinking about kind of keeping a sense of rhythm using those kick drums and the clap, but then add some different notes in as well. So for example, I'm going to start with, like, thinking about those different types of rhythms we've just looked at, I'm going to start with like a 4 on the floor. So I'm going to build up my kick drum. I'm going to have my clap on beats 2 and beats 4. And I'm going to use a very similar but slightly different hi-hat pattern to what I used before. So we'll use we'll start with coffees like that. Okay, so I've built up what I think is going to work quite well just to give me a solid feel to my song. So that's kind of like the first stage. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. It's going to give any song a kind of good steady beat, isn't it? But it's a bit boring. If you had that for 4 minutes for a whole song, it's going to get boring very quickly. So I'm going to improvise. I'm going to add a few different ideas of things that I think might sound good with it. And this is where I can be a bit more creative and work off the beat. So everything's not kind of, see how everything's lined up at the moment. I want to create rhythm by playing a few notes, not too many, but a few notes in the spaces. So what if I was to put a kick drum there? I think I'm going to end on an open hi-hat, maybe pop another kick there. And we'll have a little kind of couple there, just to give it I want to give it a bit more of an interesting finish, almost like a drum fill. and we'll put one more there, okay? And now, I've not spent ages listening to that. I've not analysed every note and where they should go. I'm just thinking where I might want some notes and what might sound good. So I'm going to play it, and then maybe we'll see if it all works or if I want to move any notes. Okay, so I quite like it. I think I'm going to add an extra note in here because there's a bit of a gap here that I'd like to fill, but it's important that you leave some gaps, okay? Don't fill every beat in. I've still got kind of 4 or 5 there where there's nothing being played, okay? And I'm just going to see if I like this as my finished rhythm. Okay, so I like that, and we will call that my finish rhythm for today, okay? So the activity for you then is just to have an experiment, create your own rhythm or create a couple of different rhythms, and then if you can either take a picture or take a little video of it playing if you've got another device, or a screenshot if you haven't, and upload that either onto Teams or onto the onto Twitter and tag at Norwich Music in it. Just means I get to see what you're doing and get to kind of give you pointers, and also see what we're kind of all doing well, see if there's anything that as a class that we're finding a little bit more tricky. So make 1 or 2 different versions of those rhythms. Like I said before, really concentrate on trying to keep a steady beat, okay? If you just randomly put your kick drum wherever and don't put it on the beats, okay, you'll find your rhythm kind of lacks any kind of consistency. So I'd start with a kind of basic pattern and then add bits to it. You might find you go a little bit too far and you think, oh, that's too much, and then you have to pull back a bit and take a few notes out. And part of this kind of creating and learning to make our own music is knowing when have we gone too far, okay? When is it better to be a little bit simpler but keep something that sounds good? Maybe just pick 1 or 2 unusual notes that just give it a little bit of your own flair and your own creativity, okay? So I think that is it for today's lesson. Like I said, experiment with that, share your work and enjoy creating the songs. Remember, you can look back, if I just show you again, you can look back into the menu here. Look at some of these things about kind of tempo and genre, about backbeats, about different styles of music. Have a look at the kind of drum rhythms from We Will Rock You and Single Ladies if you want to as well, and it'll just kind of take your learning that little bit further. But I look forward to seeing how you get on with the activity. Don't forget to share your work with me, and I look forward to seeing it soon, okay? I will see you next week. Goodbye.